Coming up on Network Africa. At least 20 migrants die off the coast of Djibouti. Chad Supreme Court clears President Idris Deby to seek a sixth term in office. Plus, South Sudan extends partial COVID-19 lockdown for another month. Hello and welcome to the program. I'm Teniola Shoboale. The United Nations says at least 20 African migrants have died after smugglers threw them overboard off the coast of Djibouti. The International Organization for Migration says that at least 80 people were thrown off the vessel after the traffickers realized it was overloaded. Their boat had been carrying about 200 migrants, including women and children. The migrants were on their way to Yemen, hoping to get to Saudi Arabia to look for work. Drownings are common off Djibouti as migrants from Ethiopia and Somalia try to escape war and poverty at home to find work in the Gulf. To politics, Chad Supreme Court has cleared President Idris Deby, who has been in power for 30 years, to seek a sixth term in office in the April 11 presidential election. He faces 9 other candidates who were approved by the Supreme Court, including his main and historical rival, Saleh Kebzabo. The inclusion of Mr. Kebzabo, who had on Monday withdrawn his candidacy, has raised questions. The opposition leader had cited the obvious militarization of the political climate following the deadly attempt by security forces to arrest another opposition candidate, Yaya Dillo, at his home in the capital. The February 28th attack left 5 members of Mr. Dillo's family dead, and that's according to his party, although the government says 3 people were killed, including the mother of the opposition leader. The Supreme Court rejected the candidacy of 7 other aspirants, including Mr. Dillo and Success Mazara, on grounds that their parties were not legally constituted. Let's get more on this story from the Director General of Bolitag's Center for International Diplomacy and Strategic Studies, Professor Bola Akintenrewa. Thank you so much for joining us on Network Africa.
Thank you.
So, Professor, what do you make of Chad's Supreme Court clearing President Idris Deby's 6th term bid?
I think it's a decision, a judgment, a clearance that derives from a situation of force majeure. The Supreme Court does not have much of an alternative. We cannot talk about an independent judiciary in this particular situation in a country where, for instance, the president has what the French will call mainmise, that is control, absolute control over all the other arms of government. The Westerners, the Western governments also cannot but support that one. Why? Because Idris Deby is required as a partner in fighting the militants. So not clearing Deby, who is strategically required to be an ally against the Islamic fundamentalists, will be a disaster for them. And when you want to look at it also, the constitutionality dimension cannot be ruled out, because very consciously Deby amended the constitution in 2018. What he dismissed, what was cancelled, rejected in 2005, he reinstated it. So I'm not surprised at all about the Supreme Court's clearing President Idris Deby.
Yeah, Professor Akinteriwa, his opponent, Saleh Kebzabo, who has withdrawn his candidacy, was also declared to run in the election. The way it's going, do you see him successfully challenging the president at the polls?
Well, if we talk about successfully challenging Davis, we are implying that successful challenge is election, winning election. I cannot see that one for many reasons, at least 4 main reasons. The first reason is that, as I was trying to mention, in 2005, a referendum was organized by this same Debbie, and it put an end to the 2-term tenure of the president. In 2018, he got the constitution amended to restore what was rejected in 2005 in such a way that he's going to be eligible to be in power until 2033. So in this case, he is already planning, he has strategized that no amount of opposition will be able to win election. And for anybody to win election in Chad, that means that there will not be any rigging. It will be fair, it will be just. And when you look at another factor, you have the opposition element. We have the newly or the joint candidate of the opposition, Teofile Bongoro. Now, having a joint candidate is one thing, but the opposition elements are still sharply divided amongst them. So, which means that their votes, even under normal circumstances, will still be split. There is also, you know, what is happening in Chad. Westerners are more interested in this particular election for one reason I have just raised. It is not in the interest of the Western powers to have another candidate, meanwhile, as of today. So whether Idris Deby is killing all his citizens, whether he does not even respect fundamental human rights, will not amount to anything constructive. So this is the beauty and the contradiction of international politics.
Yeah, a lot to keep our eyes on to see how all that plays out ahead of for the April 11 presidential polls. Professor Bola Akinteriwa, thank you so much. It's always a pleasure hearing your thoughts on the program.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure.
Senegal's main opposition leader, Ousmane Sonko, has been arrested after hundreds of his supporters clashed with police in the capital while protesting against a rape accusation he denies. An employee at a beauty salon accused Sonko last month of rape. The politician, who finished third in the 2019 presidential election, was summoned for questioning after his parliamentary immunity was removed last week. Sonko, a 46-year-old former tax inspector, accuses President Macky Sall's government of stirring up the charge to undermine its strongest rival. One of Ethiopia's main opposition parties, the Oromo Federalist Congress, has announced its withdrawal from parliamentary election scheduled for June until its demands are met. It wants its jailed leaders to be released and its offices across Oromo State to be allowed to operate. Senior members of the party, Bekele Gerba, Dejene Tafa and Jawar Mohammed, are facing terrorism charges. They were charged in September in relation to a wave of ethnic unrest that followed the murder in June of popular musician Ashalu Undesa. In the meantime, the UN's Human Rights Commissioner Michelle Bachelet has called on Ethiopia to allow independent experts into the country to investigate continuing violations that may amount to war crimes in the Tigray region. Ms. Bachelet says she has received distressing reports of killings, rape, destruction and looting. The UN adds that the Ethiopian and Eritrean armed forces, the Tigray People's Liberation Front and Amara regional forces are all implicated implicated. A statement says her office had corroborated information about indiscriminate shelling in 3 towns and reports of grave human rights violations and abuses, including mass killings in Aksum by Eritrean armed forces. Ms. Bachelet concludes that victims and survivors must not be denied their rights to the truth and justice. So our coverage of the COVID-19 pandemic now. Rwanda has received the first doses of the Pfizer COVID-19 shots to be dispatched to Africa under the COVAX vaccine sharing scheme. The batch of 102,960 doses arrived in Kigali hours after a flight landed carrying 240,000 AstraZeneca Oxford doses from the Serum Institute of India. The government has installed special infrastructure to keep the vaccine at -70 degrees. Rwanda plans to start its vaccination drive on Friday, prioritizing frontline health workers and others at high risk. It hopes to vaccinate 30% of its roughly 12 million people before the end of this year. Meanwhile, the Pfizer vaccine presents an extra logistical challenge because it requires ultra-cold storage. Now, Egypt has started vaccinating the elderly and people with chronic diseases against COVID-19 more than a month after inoculating medical workers. Prime Minister Mustafa Madbouli attended the launch of the vaccination for the elderly at a medical center in Cairo. He says that Egyptian authorities are endeavoring to provide the largest possible quantities of vaccines against COVID-19 after their approval in Egypt.
Egypt, the Arab world's most populous country with more than 100 million people, has prepared 40 vaccination centers and plans to increase that number after the arrival of more vaccine batches. The country began vaccinating frontline medical staff against COVID-19 on January the 24th using the Chinese vaccine. The country has now expanded the vaccination program to health workers. Nearly 153,000 people have applied for vaccination since Sunday, February the 28th, when the North African country opened online registration.
This is of course for my own protection, because God forbid, if I'm infected with the coronavirus, I might think it's just a regular cold and will try to recover by myself. But as you know, with chronic illnesses such as diabetes, high blood pressure, it would be hard for me to overcome this stage. So this vaccine will help me overcome this phase.
I
am protecting myself because I am old and I have chronic disease, and I encourage everyone to take it.
Egypt received 350,000 doses of a coronavirus vaccine developed by China National Pharmaceutical Group Sinopharm in 2 batches since December, in addition to 50,000 doses of a vaccine developed by AstraZeneca in February. It is hoping to receive vaccines through the COVAX facility, a global initiative aimed at providing equitable distribution of vaccines in the coming weeks. On February 24, the Egyptian Drug Authority approved Russia's Sputnik V vaccine for emergency use. Egypt's Prime Speed Medical Services said it had obtained the right to provide Sputnik V in Egypt in a statement to the stock exchange without giving details. Those getting the Sinopharm jab have a second dose after 21 days, while those who receive the AstraZeneca vaccine wait 12 weeks for the second dose. As of Wednesday, Egypt had confirmed 184,168 coronavirus cases, including 10,822 deaths since the start of the pandemic. However, health officials say the real number is likely far higher due to a relatively low rate of coronavirus testing and the exclusion of private test results.
The authorities in South Sudan say a partial lockdown brought in to reduce the spread of COVID-19 will remain in place for another month. Schools and universities will remain closed while social gatherings, including religious and sporting events, remain banned. According to the head of the COVID-19 National Task Force, the partial lockdown will run until April the 3rd. He termed the extension as necessary to prevent wider spread of COVID-19 across the country. On Wednesday, South Sudan confirmed 109 new cases and 3 deaths, bringing the total cases to 8,414 and 100 deaths. Still to come on the program. Egypt's fostering campaign helps orphans in the country. Thanks for staying with us on the program. Still on the COVID-19 pandemic, a group of South African scientists have discovered that people infected with the 501Y.V2 variant generate immune responses that offers them protection against other coronavirus variants. The genomics team were joined by the Minister of Higher Education, Science and Innovation and the Health Minister in giving an update on local research conducted on the second variant of the coronavirus in a web briefing. The team, which detected the variant last year, found it's more transmissible but does not cause more severe forms of COVID-19.
The research done by the KwaZulu-Natal Research Innovation and Sequencing Platform, CRISP, working together with the National Health Laboratory Services, African Health Research Institute, and CAPRISA, as well as the National Institute for Communicable Diseases, have come out with the findings which have demonstrated that those who were infected in the second wave, which was now dominated by what we have been referring to as the new variant, 501Y.V2, have protection from current and previous circulating variants. The 501Y.V2 variant is able to generate immune responses, we have now found out through our scientists, that neutralize itself and other SARS-CoV-2 lineages.
And this actually opens up a basis for a conversation which we are now have already started having with the manufacturers of the various vaccines, because in those engagements we are now actually saying the vaccines need to actually target the bigger problem, which is the 501V2. When we noticed that AstraZeneca was able to neutralize the variant which was in the UK and in Brazil, but not the one in South Africa. And therefore, it means therefore more work needs to be done in this regard. And everyone, all eyes are going to South Africa as to the level of success recorded in this regard.
South Africa's Department of Home Affairs has set up a task team to review certain permits issued from 2004. This follows allegations of questionable permits being issued and investigated by the Counter-Corruption Unit in a bid to fight corruption in the department. In a media briefing held in Pretoria, the Minister of Home Affairs says the committee's task is not only to focus on the regular border jumper, but to look more into high-profile violators. The task team has been mandated to find loopholes in the issuance of permits and should recommend improvements on how to curb these issues.
Though, that the peace process remains extremely fragile. Many citizens are wary that the political will may falter. They fear the positive progress may collapse. It is for those people that we, the international community, must remain united and committed to pushing the peace process forward. We can't sit on the...
I hereby wish to inform the country that the ministerial committee has been established to review all permits and visas issued since 2004. in the following categories. Category 1, permanent residence permits, commonly referred as PRP. Category number 2, corporate visas, especially in the mining sector. Category number 3, business visas. And number 4, professional or what we commonly call critical skills visas. Category number 5, retired persons visas. If you don't understand what this means, because maybe it's not common, it's a person who has already retired in their country of birth. They want to come and retire here in South Africa and stay forever here. That is called the retired persons visas. It's usually people who are very well-to-do. Number 6, citizenship by naturalization. And lastly, study visas. We chose the year 2004 as a cut-off date simply because it is the year the Immigration Act.
Finally on the program, let's take you to Egypt, where the government's fostering campaign is helping orphans in the country find new homes. In the last 1 year, authorities say that 11,600 families have taken in orphans since January 2020. Take a look.
Yasmina Al-Habal always wanted to take in an orphan, but only did so last year after Egypt's government eased regulations over who could do so and campaigned to change public attitudes, enabling her to take home baby Galia. 40-year-old Habal, who is unmarried, had always dreamt of having a daughter.
My friend said to me, "How will you face society? What are you going to tell people? Are you going to tell Galia that she isn't your child? Are you going to tell everyone else?" I'm going to tell Galia what is important is the positive change you've made to so many people's lives.
Complexities around religion and adoption prevented some people from fostering, and instead people chose to support children who remained in the full-time care of orphanages. In January 2020, however, Egypt broadened the rules for who can foster a child to include single women over 30 and divorcees. It also reduced the minimum level of education required, hoping that by increasing the pool of prospective foster parents, it could make fostering more widespread and socially accepted. A social media campaign, Yala Kafala, meaning let's sponsor a child, encouraging both taking children home and financing them, started by an Egyptian woman, has also helped spark change. Officials say 11,600 families have taken in orphans since January 2020, and another 11,000 orphans need homes. Cairo couple Mohammed Abdullah and his wife had initially failed to conceive a child of their own and decided to take in an orphan instead.
From personal experience, it is important that people focus on what they want and not what people are saying. I have met people who aren't happy to be sponsoring an orphan because of society and people's opinions about them. But I see it as a source of pride rather than as something to cause someone pain. Even if society doesn't accept it, but we're doing something great for ourselves as well as for the orphans and for society itself.
Months later, Abdullah's wife, Mena, became pregnant, and now they are raising their biological son, Solima, and Dawood, their foster child.
And that's the program today. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Teniola Shuboale. Bye for now.